Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Session Talk with Branch Politics. Of course, doing wonderful work in the Metro Atlanta community to make sure citizens are engaged and knowledgeable about all the bills that are going through the legislative session this season. We are joined by our wonderful analyst, Alexi Jenkins, who helps break down some of these bills for us. And we just want to welcome you back.
Thanks, Hannah. Happy to be here.
We're so happy you're here. You have been certainly dropping a lot of good information in the last few weeks. This is our third edition of this. And so it's been really helpful, really eye-opening to get to know some of these bills. Thanks to you, thanks to your knowledge. I do just want to share really quickly with our viewers a little bit about Lexi here. So Lexi Jenkins is the head of legislative research at Branch Politics. She has a bachelor's degree in political science with a concentration in American politics from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and a Juris Doctorate from Harvard Law School. She is a transplant from California and a member of the California Bar. So very accomplished, very knowledgeable. We're definitely talking to the right person today. So welcome again. So let's dive right into some of these bills. I know that we're going to try and go through 3 bills in 13 minutes, everybody. That's our goal. Again, we've been able to accomplish that the last 2 weeks. So we're going to try and do that again. Let's start with the first bill that you sent over, House Bill 69, which lets citizens sue government employees who violated their civil rights. So can you break that down for us and tell us about that?
Yes, of course. So HB 69 covers this topic that's really important called sovereign immunity. Sovereign immunity actually prevents government officials from being sued by citizens when they violate citizens' rights. So the reason this is really important to people is because it applies to police officers. So all the police brutality cases we saw with the protests over the summer, they're all affected by sovereign immunity. So HB 69 would waive sovereign immunity and allow citizens to sue government officials, including the police.
And this is huge, especially for civil rights advocates, people who have been fighting for justice, whether you were protesting or whether you were emailing your lawmakers. You know, we always talk about how if we want to see change, we can't just see it, in one way. We have to also see it in the form of law, in the form of amendments and things of that nature. And so I also, in the summary that you sent, it said something about affecting civil lawsuits. Can you kind of break that down in particular, like what would apply in that area?
So this bill in particular does affect civil lawsuits, like you said, and that is distinct from criminal lawsuits. So criminal lawsuits are when the state decides to bring a case against somebody and charge them with a crime, which can lead to jail time or fines. Civil lawsuits are between 2 individuals, and you can just bring one if something happens to you for most things. So like if you're injured in a car accident or something like that, like you can sue somebody in court in most cases, except for when sovereign immunity applies.
Okay. And just so we're understanding correctly, civil lawsuit would apply with like an individual versus, like you mentioned, a police officer. Is that considered an individual, or would that be criminal, or would it be both?
It can be both. So with police brutality, it can be a crime if the state chooses to prosecute it, but sometimes the state doesn't. But the families, especially when there's been a death, want some form of like reparations for the harm done. So then they can bring a civil lawsuit. Sovereign immunity is kind of like case by case determined by the states. So in Georgia, it's in place right now, so you can't sue the police. Except for like it gets very more complicated from there, but this is just a very high overview. So this bill would change that.
Right. And this obviously is a very high overview, and there's a lot more you can learn about these bills. This is just to sprinkle some information for everyone. We really, really, really want to encourage everyone tuning in to subscribe to the Branch newsletter, because every morning they're going to send you a summary of bills that are going through legislative session. Make sure to subscribe. That link is in the caption above. You can find that. You can subscribe and get more information, and then do your own homework and your own research, because there's a lot to these bills, right? But we're so fortunate that Lexi here is here to break it down to us in a digestible format, and give us sort of an overview perspective. All right, let's move on to the next bill. And before we do that, I do see we have a few people who are joining us today. Wherever you're tuning in from, we're sending you, of course, positive vibes as always. We'd like to know, where are you watching from? Are you in Georgia? What part of Georgia are you tuning in from? Or are you in another state? I'm interested about the laws that are coming through our state. You know, our state did just make history in this previous election. And so, of of course, all eyes were on Georgia, and some eyes are still on Georgia. So let us know where you're tuning in from. We are in the Metro Atlanta area, but we would love to know where exactly you all are. So drop that in the comment section and we'll be sure to shout you all out. So House Bill 43 is another one that you all have. And this bill allows drivers to declare conditions that make it hard for them to communicate and shares that info with law enforcement when they ask about the vehicle tag. So why is this bill significant and what will it do, Lexi?
So this bill modifies DMV vehicle registration forms. So what would happen if the bill passes is there'd be an optional section for people to fill out listing any conditions that they have that makes it difficult to communicate. So this is something that particularly affects people in the autistic and Asperger's communities, especially people who are nonverbal. They can, police officers have said that people who are nonverbal or who have autism come across as deceitful during traffic stops. So basically what this would do would allow people to make that information public, not public to the public, but public to the police through the DMV forms. So when a traffic stop happens, the police will search the vehicle tag, pull it up and see attached to this vehicle registration, the owner or the driver has this condition that might make their interaction with the police a little more difficult.
This is so important. I mean, I imagine if someone is in the situation, to have that information already, it could avoid situations or confusion or, anything like you said, even claims of being deceitful. So this is interesting. Can you talk about some of the groups who are really supporting this idea?
Yes. So groups like the Asperger's and Autism Network have pushed for similar things, not for this reform specifically. So they've been focused more on medical ID bracelets and wallet cards that people can have to make those conditions known. So this goes a little bit farther away from that by funneling it through the government and through the DMV. It is really interesting because I think when we think of police reform, a lot of the time we think of those bills being introduced by Democrats, but this is actually a Republican-sponsored bill in the House.
Okay, well, that's why, bipartisan legislation is important. We see that across the country. And this certainly seems like a bill that, again, is supported by Asperger and Autism Network as well as other groups. So we look forward to seeing what happens with this bill. And then finally, we have one more bill, and this is a Senate bill, just to make sure everybody knows we got House bills and we got Senate bills. And before we get to this bill, we want to shout a few people out who are joining us today. Again, drop your location. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Go ahead and leave that in the comment section. And thank you all for joining us every week. This has really been cool to grow this community together of people who are passionate about laws that are affecting our everyday lives. So thank you all for joining us. I do want to shout out, though, we see that we have people, of course, in Georgia who are representing, and we have people who are all the way from Sudan in East Africa. So shout out to you for being here with us as well. And then we have Nashville, Tennessee in the house. So thank you all for being here with us today. If you could go ahead and share this video so we can make sure to share it with our communities and get more people this information. So the last bill we're going to go through is Senate Bill 18, which eliminates the statute of limitations for sex crimes in Georgia. This is an important one. So Lexi, take it away.
Yeah, so this bill changes the statute of limitations for rape cases, aggravated sodomy cases, and aggravated sexual battery cases. Currently, rape cases have a 15-year statute of limitations, and then the other two offenses have a 7-year statute of limitations. And the statute of limitations is essentially a deadline by which you have to bring a case. So after the crime is committed, you have 15 years to report the rape and for charges to be brought, or else that claim basically expires and you can never have a day in criminal court about that case. So this is a really big one. It makes some change in certain areas. It makes really big changes. In others, it doesn't make as big of a change. So right now, if there's DNA evidence in the case, there is no statute of limitations. So this basically brings all the cases without DNA evidence up so that they can be brought at any time.
Interesting. And on the heels of the Me Too movement, which is still very prevalent in our culture, I would imagine, something like this would really help a lot of people. And we know that people don't always come out for different reasons, right? They may not speak up until years later because we see that there are opponents who criticize it, but then you also have supporters who do understand that people may not always come forward initially, right? It takes time. And so can you just kind of elaborate more on that, like what the opponents are saying and then what the supporters are saying as well?
That's actually exactly what one of the co-sponsors of the bill, Representative Harold Jones II of Augusta, has said, is that there are these really documented reasons that survivors of sex abuse don't come forward for a long time. So he basically said that as the legislature, they have to ask themselves, why are we drawing these arbitrary lines and what are we going to do about it? On the other side of the aisle, people are against this bill on the basis that after a long period of time, like witnesses' memories will fade, it's harder to collect evidence, and testimony could be unreliable, leading to less fair criminal cases.
Well, I have no comment because I know 96-year-olds with some great memory. So anyways, we appreciate you breaking that down because these are really important, y'all. When you look at these, survivors of abuse and rape, or whether it's someone with a disability, maybe living with autism, who can relay that message, through their DMV, or whether it was the first one, which was allowing citizens to sue government employees like police officers in any incident violating their civil rights. These are bills that that people are going to be voting on our behalf. Our state representatives, y'all, are going to be voting on our behalf. And so we want to just check in with you all one more time to say thank you for joining us. That was 3 bills in 13 minutes, y'all. We had Nashville in the House. We had Dallas in the House. We had Georgia in the House. We had Sudan in the House. We have Ethiopia in the House. Thank you for joining us from there. And then we have a question here. So we do have a question here from Tofik in Nashville, Tennessee. So if we could answer or not, we can respectfully pass. But it says, question, I'll go ahead and put it up on the board for us. If the owner of the vehicle or driver is autistic, the law enforcement officials are trained on how to approach or how that works.
That's a great question. This bill does not address that topic. Okay. So as far as I know, police training is kind of done on a department basis unless there are overarching laws. I agree that that's probably something that we would like addressed. However, this bill does not cover that topic.
Thank you for answering that. And so again, that was 13 bills in 13. I'm so sorry, y'all. That was 3 bills in 13 minutes. All right. 3 bills in 13 minutes. We want to shout out everybody who joined us again today. We had Baltimore in the building, Maryland in the building. We had Georgia in the building, Dallas in the building, Sudan, Ethiopia, and of course, others who are tuning in as well. We really want to thank Alexi for your time, for all your efforts, for you and Branch, everything y'all do to break this down for us, because it really is making a big difference. So we thank you all and we appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Hannah. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. Well, everybody, we'll see you all next week, next Friday, right here at noon. Join us for another The Branch Session Talk, and we look forward to sharing more bills. So until then, peace, everybody.